Welcome to a Friday night edition of Taking It to the Nub. I'm your host, Boston Jimmie. And tonight, as I said in the announcement, I got Josh Habursky on tonight. And we had him on a few years ago when he was the deputy director of the PCA. He's now the executive director of PCA. Big news, stuff to talk about. And there's so much news that's been coming out with the words Premium Cigar Association in it that I just had to get him on the show so that we can break down some of the things that are going on as he takes on this new position and as PCA continues to evolve and guide what's going on in the premium cigar business. So before we start that,
is brought to you by Casa Cuevas Cigars. In the 19th century, Juan Cuevas, Spanish immigrant from Santander, began what was to be a family business which now spans 4 generations. Like others fortunate enough to live and work in Pinar del Rio province of Cuba, Juan commenced cultivating tobacco, turning it into a successful business. Years later, in the Ciabo Valley of the Dominican Republic, Luis Cuevas Sr., Juan Jr.'s son, carried on the family tradition of handcrafting fine cigars in the family's cigar factory, Tabacalera Las Lavas. Today, Luis Sr. is joined by his son Luis Jr. in the manufacturing and sale of premium long filler cigars. So check out Casa Cuevas Cigars at www.casacuevascigars.com and on their Instagram and Facebook channels.
Catelli Cigars is back. The past few years brought many questions and changes to the cigar industry. In the wake of all uncertainty, Catelli Cigars decided to take a break and try their hand in the retail side of cigars. With 2 shops under their belt, first Riverside Cigar Bar, and now the Catelli Cigar Lounge in Vero Beach, Florida, they are now more educated in the retail and the wholesale sides of the cigar business. During this time, they received many inquiries about their cigars returning to the market. Making the difficult decision to take a break from their brand was eased knowing that when the time was right, Catelli would be back, and now they are. Catelli is excited to bring their first release, the Catelli Box Air, back to market. The Box Air, a rich box-pressed San Andreas Mexican Maduro with a Nicaraguan binder and filler, come in Box Air's 3 original sizes, Robusto, Toro, and Gordo. You can check out Catelli Cigars at catellicigars.com. And also check out their Facebook and Instagram pages. Okay, let's bring Josh in. I want to thank our advertisers for without them, this show is always a little harder to do, and greatly enjoy their sponsorship. Joshua, how are you today? Happy Friday.
Doing well, my friend. Good to be on here. Thank you for having me.
As I mentioned in the preamble to the show, there's so many things that were coming across my desk over the last few weeks that had Premium Cigar Association or PCA in it that it's just time to start talking about it. And who better to talk to than the executive director himself, Josh Habursky, which we had you on a little while ago, and you were the deputy guy. Now you're no longer deputy dog.
Yeah, now it's full time, full throttle. We are making a lot of changes and working with the team to kind of take it to the next chapter. And it's been a blessing to be with the organization. I mentioned, in the green room, like started out as a consultant for the organization, director of federal affairs, then took over government affairs, deputy executive director, interim executive director, and now, get the nod for the next at least 3.5 years. I love the organization. I love the industry. And really just fortunate to have my dream job and get the ability to work with a great group of people on staff and the board of directors. And we're going to do some big things. You've seen, you've mentioned all the stuff that's been coming out. A lot of it's been provocative. We're going after the folks that are going after premium cigars. Like, make no mistake about it. We're not hiding in the bunker. We are moving forward.
Okay. And I've seen that building up to this. One of the things when you talk about some of the some of the folks you're going to be working with, I just noticed, I'll put out the article today, is you have Liz Perez Carrillo has been now put on the board of directors. Talk a little bit about your experience with Liz and what she's going to bring to the table for premium cigars.
Absolutely. I mean, so Lizette came on board in July, during or not July, March rather, for at the original trade show, and has really been working with our team on committees, kind of getting ingratiated into PCA. The status of a company like EPC and the direction that they've gone in. I've been fortunate to tour their factory in the DR and see, what they've done full bore there. And we're excited to have her and all the other board members. A lot of the other ones were reelected to the board, which is a testament to the confidence of the membership as they look at some of our other board members. But having manufacturers that have an outside voice, I know Lizette has a law degree. It's good to get those insights and kind of fine tune some of the plans that we're working on. I mean, we're undergoing a strategic plan for the association, a 5-year one. So getting her experience and her insights along with the rest of the folks, I'm excited at that prospect. In September, I'll have my first in-person board meeting with all of the board members in DC.
Oh, okay. So everybody flies into DC and we're going to set the stage. I'm sure that's going to be part of planning out what's continuing to happen in New Orleans, and along with many other things that PCA does for us.
Yeah, and we have kind of coordinated timing. We're also doing our fall fundraiser in
Yeah,
DC.
you want to get into the fall fundraiser because I just
Yeah.
saw that come across the news today. And I found that to be intriguing. So give me a little discussion on on that particular one.
So this is something that we've been doing now. I think we're in our 5th year. And typically we'll have 100 to 200 people for an event. Kind of a traditional cigar event, multi-vendor. We'll have an auction. Michael Herklotz this year will be auctioning, the auctioneer. But all of the money from this event goes towards our grassroots advocacy. So we pay a good chunk of money to, send out those grassroots alerts and petitions. And this is something that we've been doing on a reoccurring basis so that people can, participate. And this is open to everyone, retailers, manufacturers, and consumers. We get a lot of folks from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, but all are welcome to this. And, we will have our board in town. So we will have a lot of special guests on hand.
I'm actually sharing the article. So yeah, so this is happening on September 25th. It's a Wednesday. It's happening in Alexandria, Virginia, at a place called Don Tito.
Yep.
All right. And there are
Outdoor
two ticket
rooftop.
there are two ticket values. One is 150, which I guess is your general, and then the VIP is 250. And the VIP, I think you get an additional drink ticket, and you get an additional package of cigars. But this looks like a fun thing to do if you can go. How now are you limiting? It doesn't say in the article whether there's a limit. So
Yeah,
just
I mean, typically in the past, like I said, we've had about 100 to 150. This year, I think, what the value that folks are getting will get, it grows every year. So, I mean, the first one was 40 people. So, it's always good to see more and more people that have a good time, enjoy it, and bring some of their friends this go around. So, that will be a good way for, people to contribute to the cause. Last year, I think we raised $25,000. Every dollar spent went to advocacy programming.
now, do you find that you draw primarily from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or are you able to bring some people in, like consumers, for instance, bring them in from outside that area?
Yeah, I mean, predominantly from the DC area. Our retail members, like John Anderson, Gary Pesh, that are in the area, they send it out to a lot of their customers. They're supporters of the association. So, we're and Steve Castro up in Maryland at Davidas. So, when they do that, we kind of get what we need for it. I mean, this is a small scale event. With the trade show being in the March, April timeframe, it's nice to have another small event.
Hmm.
And I mentioned to you in the green room, we're getting ready to make an announcement about a new hire next week that will work on trade show and events. This is another project of, I would like to see this grow into a 500 person event that does have a larger draw outside of the DC, Maryland, Virginia area in the future. And
So,
having that all is good.
so let's shift a little to, I'm going to speed the film up a little bit. We're going to put us at in New Orleans next year.
Hmm.
Um, Now, from what I understand, PCA, CRA, and others have been very instrumental in working with the local government officials to get a smoking ability during the time of the trade show. Um, at the trade show, I understand the answer is yes, not a problem. You got that taken care of.
Hmm.
After hours of the trade show, how is that going to work? Like, did you get a variance or anything like on Bourbon Street, which last time I read, 20 feet from the building is anywhere on Bourbon Street?
Yeah.
How do you
No,
how do you
there's
manage that?
So there is the Convention Center Bureau has been extremely helpful working with us. They, help spearhead the ability to, with the samples, not to have to pay the taxes on that.
Yeah.
That was key. New Orleans wants to have the PCA show there, and they're excited for us to come back. They've gone above and beyond. We're going to have several venues that will permit indoor smoking, courtyards. Right now, for all the days, I can tell you we're actively working on plans. We may do some tents on Bourbon Street and have kind of a festival feel. That's an option. We have several sponsors that are interested in opening the opening party reception. So we're discussing that with them. A decision hasn't been made, but in August 20, I believe it's August 22nd through the 24th, we are doing I believe the first ever, at least in my tenure, site visit, where we invited all of the manufacturers, all the sponsors to come tour the convention center, tour some venues that will permit smoking, not only for events that are directly related to PCA, but dinners, networking events that the manufacturers and suppliers host themselves. We're going to be releasing a guide on smoker friendly venues as well. And Antoine and our communications team is working on that as we speak.
Okay, so that's a good thing. I like the idea of tents possibly on Bourbon Street because let's be real, after hours, people aren't bouncing around the Garden District normally that much. They're kind of hanging out down Bourbon Street, having fun, doing their crazy. The casino, no smoking.
No, the casino, that's their policy. That's I believe a independent policy that they've made their decision on.
Okay.
But
Um,
that doesn't mean that we're gonna just let up on that. Let's put
yeah.
it that way.
Well, this is this kind of gets me a segue into a second what I would call a 800-pound gorilla in the room. There'll be a couple of these in the discussion tonight. Um, Generational prohibition. All right. So Massachusetts has been all over the wavelengths lately about the possibility of pulling a trigger on generational prohibition. They've already have some communities that have already started that, going back as far as what, 2020, something like that. Where basically, for those that don't understand what I'm talking about, they're going to set a date, a year, that says anybody born after that year cannot purchase tobacco products, including premium cigars. And it doesn't move like we do today, where when you're 21 and then 21, it's not that. It's like if you were born after 2000, some of these, correct me if I'm wrong, some say if you were born in the 21st century, you're not allowed to buy tobacco.
Yeah.
Okay. How are we going to address this? And this is going to be the next new thing. I could see it right now. It's going to be a big push to make that go from community to community. Maybe it's not at a state level, maybe it's at a city level or a town level. But how do you work this? And at the same time, we have 2% of the population smoke cigars, right? Somehow we have to figure out how to play as nicely with the other 98% and not completely piss them off, but at the same time have our freedoms and make it good. I mean, where's the happy point in your mind? Where are you trying? Where's PCA going to try to go with all of this as far as restrictions around? Are you going to go absolutely? There should be no restrictions.
So, I think that back up a little bit on the generational smoking bans. This is an international issue. In New Zealand, they tried this. The government switched over and they pulled this policy is absurd. It doesn't work. You create a black market. There's a myriad of different problems that come as a result of this. The only thing that this will do in the counties that adopt this in Massachusetts are going to increase revenue for other counties or other states or online companies. It's perversive against brick and mortar small businesses that have to comply with this draconian regulation or legislation. And this has been tried in California. We fought that. Hawaii, they continue to introduce it. Massachusetts is special in the fact that the county boards of health have a lot more autonomy and authority over this. So in our team, I asked our lawyers and some of our lobbyists, like, is this something that we're going to have to worry about everywhere? And the answer is to some extent, yes, but Massachusetts is very unique in that sense. Like they've been working on a lot of this in different areas, and it's mind-boggling to me that in the birthplace of liberty in this country, you have policies like this that are completely restrictive. And this applies to nicotine. It's not even just limited to combustible cigarettes or combustible products in general, or cigarettes or things. So it's really targeting all of the above. So in this instance, whereas a lot of times our arguments are very, you know, focused on premium only, and we are leading with those talking points. This is a little bit of a bigger tent fighting this issue, these generational nicotine bans or smoking bans, as they call them. So, you know, we're working with other trade groups, NATO, we're working with CAA, we're working with, you know, these other associations, the convenience stores, because this will have wide-ranging effect on a lot of different product categories.
Yeah, so obviously the go forward point, as you mentioned, is hey, this hasn't worked in places where they thought it would. It's not a good idea. It's not going to help anything. People can go somewhere. I mean, really about purchasing of product. That's the first thing, right? So if you're not in the right year bracket, you cannot purchase, but that doesn't keep them from going to New Hampshire and purchasing or going to Connecticut and purchasing, right? Which is across the border, or Rhode Island, right? It doesn't stop that. So where is there any commonsensical stuff that can be dealt with the other side on this, or you feel that this is just going to be a continual butt heading thing that we're doing?
I think this is an absolute absurd policy that just doesn't work. And it's not one where there's much room for negotiation. You know, we're not going to try and say, well, all right, delay this for X number of years or
Right.
focus on existing businesses. Fundamentally, we believe as an association that, you know, adults should have the ability to choose to smoke a premium cigar or not. You reach the legal age. You know, I just had a discussion with the HHS and OMB and OIRA, the White House executive agencies, about Tobacco 21 today. There are existing rules in place that restrict and youth from purchasing tobacco products. Focus in on that. But like if you reach 21 years of age and you want to willfully make this decision to smoke a cigar, you should have that right. I think it's also one of those slippery slope things, like these unelected county health boards are making a decision about this, trying to implement this policy. And then what are they going to do next? Are they going to determine, you know, soda, steaks, gambling, McDonald's cheeseburgers? Like, where does it stop?
I
You
mean, I would even ask, okay, I get it. This is tobacco, not even nicotine, tobacco in its general sense is viewed as the number one killer in the United States. That's the talking point, right? But even if that's the case, what about the prolonged effects of alcohol? Nobody ever goes after the alcohol business anymore. All right.
well,
It's almost like the prohibition went so bad back in the 20s that they said, we're never going to go down that path again with alcohol, right? They kind of learned the
well,
lesson.
and that's only in this country. In Europe, they've beaten tobacco so much that they are now going after alcohol and caffeine and other things like that. So, I mean, we
Certainly
have to.
not Germany. It's like a staple
I,
food.
well, the EU in general, I mean, it is very challenging where kind of the goalposts have moved, and we have to be consistent, upfront. This is a no-go. And like I would tell folks, if you're a cigar consumer in Massachusetts, I read some of the comments on social media posts, and a lot of them, cigar media was shining light on this. This is a big issue. But some folks, well, you know, this doesn't affect me. Well, because it doesn't affect you, you find enjoyment from a cigar. You've built a community over a cigar. You've built friendships over a cigar. You can have civil conversations at a cigar lounge. Don't you want other folks to be able to enjoy that same, you know, passion that you have, stress reliever, whatever you want to call it? I don't want to deprive anyone of that. I don't want to see anyone lose their business because they're not able to offer that. My solution, Jimmie, and you said, what is an acceptable restriction to kind of make sure the other 98% of people are taken care of? If you don't like to smoke cigars, don't go to a cigar lounge or a cigar shop.
I agree
You know,
with that.
that's plain and simple. There's a lot of other rules and restrictions that are out there that I don't necessarily agree with. People don't want you to be able to smoke outside in a public park. My tax dollars are going to pay for a public park, and I want to smoke a cigar and I clean up after myself. I think that there's nothing wrong with that. We fought it in Florida in the beaches and public parks, and we'll continue to do that. So, there are things that this is the furthest extreme that anyone can go in my eyes.
Uh, So another thing that has been going on besides prohibition generational bans is we recently had some elections over in the EU. And these elections have gone from a conservative right agenda to a liberal left agenda, okay, at least in the parties. Um, what are you doing now? How are you reading those tea leaves?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where in the United States, which is our bread and butter, our focus, we're prepared for all variables. If Democrats win the House, Senate, and the presidency, or Republicans, or divided government, we have scenario planning. We've built relationships across the aisle. Premium cigars, at least, especially at the federal level, and Glenn Loop working at the state level has made incredible inroads on the state legislatures. We're whether it's left or right, there are compelling arguments for the premium cigar business, small businesses, and we're prepared for that. Now, looking across the pond, and in some other areas, we keep in close contact and communication with Paul Varakis, who runs the European Cigar Manufacturers Association. We've offered comments. Luckily, our association, along with Cigar Rights of America and Cigar Association of America, we've paid for a lot of the research, the data, whether it's health or economic, and the lawsuits that all the associations have spent a lot of money on. That information and that data can be used across the pond as they argue some of these things. It is a lot more difficult, given the US has a very, very unique court system. And we've been fortunate enough to have, great litigators. Number one, we have compelling facts on our side. But we're 3-0 against the FDA, and the recent decisions with overturning Chevron, which is
Yeah, we're going to
another.
get into that. I'd like to get into that
What?
after the break for sure, because I'm
So
sure there's a detailed discussion on that.
yeah, I won't prelude that too much, but we have a strong foundation here, no matter where things go. I myself, along with our government affairs team, I head till Milwaukee next week for the Republican National Convention. We have 300 people registered for a cigar event. I'm going to the Democratic National Convention. We're hosting a cigar event downtown Chicago. We'll have another 300 people. Glenn Loop and I are going to Louisville, Kentucky for the National Conference of State Legislatures. We're partnered with CAA for these events. We'll have and Sazerac, the alcohol company or conglomerate, will have another 200 to 250 state legislators at that event. So in terms of outreach and getting our message across, we have never been more aggressive and, educating folks. When I started with IPCPR at the time, 5 years ago, you wouldn't believe the number of people on Capitol Hill that thought premium cigars were just big cigarettes. And the trade associations, all three of them have done a good job of changing that message. We have real strong champions that are Republicans and Democrats, that they're out there talking about this message. You have a Congressional Cigar Caucus that's bipartisan, over 50 members. many of which are in safe districts that will be returning next Congress. So we're prepared for whatever the election brings us.
Okay. There are a couple comments here from the audience. Lou Piscatelli just chimed in. So he says, so after the old timers, I guess he's talking about guys like me, pass away, then there is no one left to buy cigars from the shops. This is cigar genocide. I like that. Adib says it's all about the lack of knowledge by these lawmakers. Premium cigars are not cigarettes. They need to learn and know the difference between these two tobacco products. And then Kevin the Commish Paro says, so PCA will be in Boston at the State House to fight for Massachusetts rights? When you coming to Boston?
So Lisa Sigler, our membership director, will be going to Massachusetts through retail stores. We have packets of information. We released a petition this week fighting the generational smoking ban, so people can go to Cigar Action and sign that petition, especially in Massachusetts. That's
Well, I was going
where
to say, does it matter? I was going to do that, but then I read it and I was like, should you really have a mass address for that to be taken
yeah,
seriously?
that's the most impactful, is if you have a Massachusetts address, but that's something that we'll be sending to the really. So I want to be clear here. There's two parts, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Massachusetts, the state legislature, there's a little bit of lobbying towards preventing some of this action, like a preemption bill, things like that. There's a few things that we could do there, but most of these are actually local public health boards. So like Concord, Massachusetts, they're considering something. Brookline already has something in place. A lot of the suburbs around Boston are the ones that have been considering these
But
generational
not
smoke.
not Boston proper.
Yeah, not the city itself has not, other than, conjecture. Some people have said New York City is, considering this. The magnitude of that and the effect of it is a lot greater, obviously, than, some of the smaller communities where there's not a lot of retailers. That's the thing that we struggle with in Massachusetts. Quite frankly, there are not a ton of PCA members. And that's one of the reasons why we're sending out Lisa Sigler there to recruit members if they are not PCA members, but also to engage the ones that are PCA members on this issue. It is a very important issue to anybody that sells premium cigars in the Commonwealth. And unfortunately, it's sparse right now in terms of the universe that is involved. So we got to drive down, we got to get more consumers. And again, to the point, if it doesn't affect you, if you're 50 years old in Boston and you're like, I can continue to buy these products, think about how much you've enjoyed the cigar lifestyle. Don't you want others to have that opportunity? I personally, that's one of the driving force there. Like I don't see this as, just because it doesn't affect me, it's not my problem. This is my problem, not just because of my association hat as the executive director, but because I have seen personal happiness and joy from the cigar industry, and I don't want to deprive anyone that's of a legal age of that.
And we need to also keep in mind, as Lou smartly brought up, cigar genocide. Basically, what will happen is, yeah, maybe that doesn't affect you, like you said, because you're within the age bracket to still purchase. But as you get older, you might slow your habit down. You might eliminate your habit for whatever reasons, right? But there's nobody picking up behind you. Therefore, the demand is going to decrease. Therefore, the supply is going to go down, okay? Because people are going to be like, I can't carry these. Nobody buy them. The shops are going to go out of business. And you might still be alive, right? Let's say you're 80 years old and you still like enjoying cigars. Well, guess what? You're going to find it very difficult to buy cigars unless you buy them online. Now, how does that work And before you answer that question, we're going to take a quick break to think about that, about how online cigar sales work in an environment of generational prohibition to the citizens of those communities. So let's take a quick break.
And today's show is brought to you by Bocock Brothers Cigars, a new and active brand founded by two Honduran brothers, Bryant and Douglas Bocock. The brand zeroes in on those folks that are looking for easy to smoke cigars inspired by unusual circumstances. Very importantly named after their very interesting and imitable last name, Bocock. Right now, Bocock Brothers is featuring their signature edition, made at the AJ Fernandez factory in Esteli, Nicaragua. It features an Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper, a Nicaraguan Habano binder, and a Nicaraguan filler. Available in three popular formats, a Robusto, a Toro, and a Gordo. You can check out Bocock Brothers Cigars at www.bocockbrothers.com. And today's show is brought to you by Platinum Nova Cigars. Platinum Nova is a family owned and operated premium cigar company. Only the highest vintage tobacco and the most skilled hand workmanship go into the making of each Platinum Nova cigar. This results in a timeless blend of art and craftsmanship. The Nova brand and the family's work are a tribute and an honor to their grandfather to always remember him and his infinite passion for the finest cigars. Their love for cigars started with their grandfather, a dedicated master blender and entrepreneur in the cigar industry. So the next time you're looking for that exquisite cigar experience, pick up a Platinum Nova. You can check them out at Platinum Nova Cigars, www.novacigar.com, and on their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels. And today's show is brought to you by All Saints Cigars, a company founded in 2019 and headed up by industry veteran Mickey Pegg and his two friends, Martin Corboy, a successful restaurateur, and Frank Leo, an Air Force Academy graduate military veteran. As Mickey explains it, they were all sitting down, talking and smoking cigars, and finally they decided that they would do this thing together. It was time. Mickey said, I decided if I'm going to work hard at it, it should be something I love. Besides, a tough day with a cigar is better than a great day doing anything else. Soon after, they began the process of launching All Saints Cigars, jokingly referring to themselves as the Holy Trinity, St. Michael, St. Martin, and St. Francis. They chose for their logo the cross of St. James, the patron saint of Nicaragua, the country where their cigars would be produced. You can check out All Saints Cigars at www.allsaintscigars.com.
Okay, let's get back to Josh. All right, so before we took the break, we were talking about this generational thing. So the question I have is, how does that work? Do you understand the legalities, or have they even defined them as to that person who's under the envelope of being able to buy cigars, and will they be prohibited then, obviously, from buying cigars online from, say, like online shop like a Smoke Inn, or an underground cigar shop, and say, hey, you know what, you can't buy them there because you're underage?
In the short answer to this, it's almost an unenforceable policy at the local level. Unless they, go full bore after looking at addresses and things like that. I mean, the scope of this, it really isn't defined in most of these policies that we've seen thus far, explicitly, but it would be very difficult for them to enforce. And the fact of the matter remains, like, you have some of these public health officials that, went on a power trip over the past few years, especially with some other restrictions. But you have law enforcement that don't want to enforce this stuff. You know, the law enforcement community, you have a lot of them that are cigar smokers. So why are you, who would want to harass adults for making a purchase of a once legal product in that area, but nationally legal product? Let's put it at that. So there's so many holes. This generational smoking ban in terms of policy is like Swiss cheese. It's filled with so many holes. And enforcement's one of them. So I don't know that I can give you an answer about the online side of things on it directly, but I think enforcement in general, whether it's online or brick and mortar, it would be very difficult, especially when, at what point it's enacted. You know, how are you going to determine all of that? Who can buy and who can't buy?
Yeah, I would think that if I owned an online shop today, and let's say we'll go back a few years before the 21 age was nationalized, right? They had to adhere to state rules, right? To say, well, in that state it's 21, in this state it's 19, right? And they knew that they could not send anything to somebody who is not 21 to 21-year-old state, okay, versus the 19-year-old state. I would think something similar might happen. Well, like you say, it's localized to the point where that makes it very difficult to enforce and very difficult to implement something like
Yeah.
that. And I would
Are
think
you,
that could go in a court of law and say, wait a second.
yeah, are you could live on one block and move 2 blocks over and you can
Yeah.
buy, you can't buy. And to me, Massachusetts and the lunacy of this policy, the only thing that it does, the only real policy objective is just helps New Hampshire's tax base and helps the sales in New Hampshire. So
Yeah. Like people go across the border to buy all their alcohol. They
yeah,
don't buy it in
same, yeah,
Massachusetts. They go to
same
the
thing.
state,
Same
same
thing. If
thing in
you
Mass.
go on the state line of New Hampshire, you have great cigar selection, you have great alcohol selection because Massachusetts is so nuts. So, you know, and fortunately, you know, I mentioned the NCSL conference, the state legislative conference. Last year we held it, or the conference was in Indianapolis, and we had an event at Byrne, Rocky Patel's place. And we had 20 or 25 state legislators from Massachusetts from both parties, and they were legit cigar smokers, fans of it. And I think that sometimes even these policymakers don't realize that when they're out on the golf course, that they're this occasional cigar smoker. They might not consider themselves an aficionado, but people don't want to be told they can't do that, you know, once or twice a year. You know, I think in the cigar media world and PCA and some of the folks that we interact with at the on the show circuit or the festival circuit, these are almost like super consumers, super
Yeah, these
cigar
are the geeks.
smokers.
These are the super geeks. Right?
Yeah, but you know, your average person that, you know, has one or two a year, they're still going to be pissed about this.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about we touched on early before the break, the RNC and the DNC. One of the things you were quoted as saying is that it's important that the premium cigar industry has a presence at these key political events, and it's exciting to host an event for both parties at PCA member locations to showcase the essence of specialty tobacco retailing. You guys have now planned for both the RNC and the DNC 2 events. First event is going to be held at Metro Cigars in Germantown up in Milwaukee. And the second one's going to be held at Up Down Cigars in downtown Chicago. This is open to anybody that comes in the area, right? So if I was to travel to Milwaukee, I could come into Metro Cigars and enjoy the event and vice versa. What does that event entail? What are you going to do?
So the event itself, they're primarily for the convention attendees, the people that are actually attending the RNC, the DNC. So there'll be a lot of members of Congress, there will be staff, political consultants, people in that sphere. That's the target audience. We do have some area retailers going to this and industry folks. These are not really consumer events for people, but these are at the events we'll have a wide range of cigars available. Drew Estate is our partner for this event. And then we will have, refreshments. This is a reception networking event, and one centered around cigars. We need to be front and center. Again, continuing to educate folks, continue to, provide cigars at these different forums. And it's been impactful. We do quarterly events here in Washington, DC, similar style events. And I can't tell you how many staffers, people in this political sphere have tried their first cigar, all of them well over the age of 21 at a PCA event. So it's important that we get in front of the right people.
So are these closed events?
They're semi-open. We have a target audience. Again, there are rules that they have to be open to the public. So like that they're open, you can go and register there. But there's certain there's a target audience for it. Let's put it that way.
But they're free to attend.
Free to attend.
Free to attend. So if you're, like I said, if I was in the area of Chicago or Milwaukee, I could step in at that time from 6 to 9 and sit down and listen. Is there going to be enough space in these lounges? I don't know these lounges that well, but these are
Yeah,
large
you know,
lounges.
it could be a challenge. I mean, we're registering hundreds of people for it. Milwaukee, we're over the 300 person and
Mm.
still rolling in registrations. 6 to 9, we're hoping that, people come in sporadically, but the venue in Milwaukee is very large and we'll be able to accommodate folks indoor or outdoor.
Okay, very good. That makes sense. July in Milwaukee is probably some very large mosquitoes. Last time I was up there, they were like this big. um, all right, so if you're in the area and you want to go, you can check it out. I'm contemplating my own thoughts on that, whether I do such a thing. Um, so there would not be a need for a press pass or anything like that if you're in the media. Okay.
Nope.
All right. So what else is going on in PCA? Did I miss
So I
something?
mentioned some, new hires, a new hire in the works, restructuring. We have a lot of, in terms of member engagement, Lisa Sigler and Maria Cervantes, who are on our team, they are, utilizing the next few months going to prospective members, existing members. We have additional new member benefits, rolling out a 401k program. We're redeveloping our website. We're working on relaunching the PCA product hub, which will have specialty releases with certain manufacturers that will only be available to PCA members. Ton of different things. We're actually also renovating our townhouse, our office location.
Oh,
We continually have 400 staffers at these events I mentioned quarterly, and it's taken a beating. I mean, we really, can fit about 80 to 100 comfortably, and we exceed that a lot. Our events are very popular, and people want to attend it, so we're right sizing it, making some upgrades there. But yeah, certainly a lot of things. And we talked about a lot of the government affairs stuff. The other thing that was from the news this past week, North Carolina has better licensing for cigar bars. So you're seeing a lot of positive things of like, we want to work on some of these, whether it be local, state, or federal, to get things across the finish line so that it's easier to do business. We're also looking at how the whole universe of cigar selling works. You have a lot of distilleries, golf courses, gun ranges that are now selling cigars through either their own retail license or a wholesale, buying them from a wholesaler. Is there a way that they can get involved with the association? I mentioned the site visit with the trade show and a lot of the planning that we have there. Those are some big ticket items. I think that, the board meeting in September will really chart out the course for that. And then we have a few, I think, really impactful expansion projects in the works that, we have another board meeting later this month, virtual one, and I'm hoping to get the green light on a few of those proposals, as well as start to really do the strategic plan. So, and when there's new leadership anywhere, there's a little bit of a review and reset. That's kind of what I did during the interim. And you can talk to our board of directors every day. We're doing something new. We're communicating, and the team is really stepping up. I think that everyone knows my background of being government affairs. Lisa Cox, who runs our trade show, integral part of the team. I look to her for expertise in that realm, and we've been empowering and filling gaps where necessary. We've heard from people, and I take feedback very strongly. I think that it's important that if we're doing something right, if we're doing something wrong, the media, our members are letting us know about it. We want to make sure that, the business side of, the trade show, the programming side of the trade show, the social side of the trade show, those three key elements, and educational, that they're all being considered. Last year, I think we hit a home run with the day one and the conference side of things, all the different sessions. People were raving about them. I told the folks this week on our staff call, there's an expectation and a new bar set for that from what we did this year. So
That's
we need
correct.
to go above and beyond that. And then I said, when it comes to the evening receptions, that's where we can really work. There's a lot of partnerships that our manufacturers work with and our retailers work with, that we can build a better overall experience. You've seen it in the press release. New Orleans is a more affordable city than Las Vegas. So I think that there's some advantage to that. And Lisa Cox and I recently had lunch with the New Orleans Convention Center, and they really, really have an appetite to see this become a success. They want our business. They understand that, we're generating a ton of economic activity when we come for that show. So I expect the enthusiasm levels for this coming year to be very high. And the business side, it's kind of self-correcting. This was a major shift for manufacturers to change their cycles, with the buying cycle. Now that they have a year under their belt with having, a spring trade show, I think that you'll see some of those ironing out of the details there.
Now you are signed up for 2 years in New Orleans?
2 years in New Orleans.
Okay. Are you trying to continue that, or are you trying to push back to Vegas after that?
We're trying to do work with New Orleans and Vegas. So
Okay.
I think Vegas, most likely after the 2 years that we're in New Orleans, we will return to Las Vegas within the next 5 years. But the plan, now is New Orleans and Vegas are our two anchor hosts. And then, throughout the country, I have said I like to partner with other organizations that are doing things right. And, we have a good universe of manufacturers and retailers. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of great cigar events in the last 5 years. I've got to go to many of them. If there are ways that we can partner with them, and I have to be a steward of the industry and protect the industry as our chief lobbyist. But now, in the role of being the executive director, I have to fund the fight and make sure that our operations are sound. And so if we can do revenue generating partnerships that allow us to expand our arsenal so that we can go after things at the local level and help internationally, that's going to be something that I'm going to really work on. And fortunately, like I said, we have a great team and a board of directors that shares that vision, that they want to be aggressive. You noted it. A lot of the other media outlets have noted it. We you look objectively, you can look at other industries out there in terms of our budget capacity and the size of staff. We punch way above our weight class. And that's something that we're going to continue. I credit Scott Pierce for a lot of this. He built a great foundation. He built a strong team. Scott and I are very close friends. I saw him this week, and he's working at CAA with another one of the cigar industries. There are opportunities for us to really, work together and unite on some things.
Okay. Now, going back to PCA Board of Directors and some feedback. So, you guys did a great job on working with the media this past year, and I truly appreciate the policy change in that, because I think it made it more comfortable that media was welcome. Okay, but I'm still curious, will there be a time when there is a media member, other than PCA, you have your own media group, but having a media member on the board? Because I think the media brings a different viewpoint to the industry, and I just don't see that participation at PCA.
Well, I mean, that would require a bylaws change.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a heavier lift than some of the other things. The board had to review the bylaws and change it so that associate members could be on the board of directors. That was something that happened in the past 3 years. So, we're certainly open to exploring other avenues. There have folks that have had ideas about getting some of the other, larger, like for instance, in the liquor industry, that they sell a lot of cigars, having that represented, maybe like a secondary or tertiary business, but they're doing a ton of volume. There's a lot of ideas that are out there. That's, in my capacity, that's not my decision. That's something that our board of directors will have to discuss. I'm sure that things like that will come up in our strategy session at our board meeting in September. But I think that if the media are wanting something like that, the best thing that you can do is talk to other retailers, talk to the board members, express your viewpoints. This year's trade show, I'm going to make sure that we have a pre-conference for the media as well as a press conference. We will have our executive leadership team there. That's something that's perfect to raise in one of those forums.
Now, do you publish the minutes of the board meetings so that people could see it, like the media can see the proceedings?
So a lot of for the annual meeting, that is,
Yeah.
we have committee. So there's a lot of different moving parts with that. We have committee meetings. A lot of those are, some of those are internal matters. There's a lot of sensitivity, especially in the advocacy committee, that, we have active litigation. And we've had issues in the past where, things are out there and there's an angle that somebody writes about that actually could adversely affect,
Yeah, it misrepresents the
misrepresenting it.
true
And
thinking.
so,
Hmm.
that's why for each committee, it's a little bit different. But for the board meeting minutes, that's, that's something that I can evaluate again with our executive team. I do not believe that our regular board meeting minutes were published, on a monthly basis. Like I said, the annual reports are out there, but most of the stuff that's discussed are sent out via press release. And then we get follow-up questions from members of the media about that. And I'm an open book. Everyone knows that. I think Glenn Loop and I and Scott Pierce, we cover podcasts any and all times. We write articles for other publications. So we try to use the megaphone as best as we can.
Right. So last question in my head is, we touched on it very briefly before the break, is the Chevron decision.
Mhm.
Okay. So the Chevron decision, huge decision on the part of the cigar industry, let alone everything else that it impacts. Um, what is your view on the impact of that, and how does that affect the current litigations that you're going forward with, if you could talk about that?
Yeah, so I think most importantly, this affects the regulatory process in the future. Now, the FDA is going to have to do several added layers of scrutiny on their regulations. I think the biggest impact this has is on rules like the tobacco manufacturing product standards that was a proposed rule, the characterizing flavor rule on cigars. Those things I don't think pass muster now that the standard has shifted. Our lawsuit, which is on appeal, my understanding of this, and I'm not a lawyer. I work with the litigation teams, and am in a lot of those meetings, but because it's on appeal, the merits of this challenge are the Administrative Procedures Act, and the onus is now on the FDA to prove that they did the necessary steps of a part of the regulatory process. So don't want to get too far in the weeds in that, but what could it have an effect? Possibly, but I think the bigger effect is the future of how regulations are made. It will require congressional intent. And I mentioned we have very strong congressional relationships. It's a lot easier for us to block bad policy coming from elected officials rather than unelected regulators that kind of operate in the shadows.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Um, anything else PCA wise?
No,
I think we I think we covered the fire hose of information that's been flowing.
yeah, there's a lot out there, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future. But for any of the viewers, I'm very accessible. Please reach out via email, phone number. It's all public on on our website, premiumcigars.org. Feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ideas. I'm always open to it, and that goes for everyone on our team. That's one thing that we want to pride ourselves on, is kind of that in DC, members of Congress and their staff, they have a constituent services element. And basically, we want to have that for the trade association itself.
Good. Okay. By the way, this cigar, for those that don't know it, the El Politico, which I got from Josh 2 years, 3 years ago. It's been
Yeah,
a while. Had two, smoked the first one. It was okay. It's aged very well.
it's
So
good.
sometimes time makes all the difference in the world when it comes to cigars. With that said, you obviously walked the show floor. You interacted with a lot of different brand owners. You saw all the new stuff that's coming out. What piqued your interest? Give me like your top 5 things. I'm going to put you on a spot there. I'm sorry, but what
So
piqued your interest from a packaging perspective, from a new brand perspective? What are some things that you saw? This is exciting. This is good.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things like it was good to see. I mean, Drew Estate's booth was phenomenal. It was nice to see them at the show. They've been really good partners with us recently. I was just with Glenn Wolfson, and their team has been really helpful and supportive of PCA. I think that in terms of cigars. Rocky Patel has been putting out some great stuff. I'm a fan of the Gold Label, his Year of the Dragon. I also was impressed with Gurkha's Year of the Dragons, that were made from the different factories. Um, Emissary from Macanudo, really
Mhm.
impressed with that cigar. So I got to try a lot, and I'm sure I'm missing things here and there. But I also enjoyed like the interactive elements, Toscano's session. Michael Cappellini and I have become close friends. I think that he does a great job of teaching people. I was bringing two members of Congress and shepherding them around the show floor, and Michael sat there with the Toscano team for an hour with the members and really gave them an education. Then they went over to Oliva's booth and were playing dominoes. So like there were a lot of these like little stories, and this trade show for me was trial by fire. Scott had a family emergency, was not at the trade show, so I was running the trade show. I had to step in that interim capacity there, so I was wearing the two hats, and so I think that this coming show, as I prepare to run the show, and obviously Lisa Cox, does all the nuts and bolts. I'll hopefully get to interact with even more companies and more brands and take them around. But I was impressed with a lot what's out there. And I think that the new products, it's good to see that people are able to do that, and that it comes full circle. People are able to do that at the trade show, sell new products and release things because they're able to produce those. And if the FDA's regulations would have went through, they would not have been able to do
Mhm.
that. Um, the other one that I think is great, and I want to give one shout out to a company in particular, because they go above and beyond every year for the PCA, and that's Pete Johnson at Tatuaje. Not only am I a fan of pretty much everything, well, really everything coming out of the My Father factory, Pete's stuff in particular. And then, he continually year in and year out makes a contribution to the association. He did a special release and donated $25,000. I got the call actually when I got the job. I officially got the job from the board of directors. The team called me, and then the next call was Pete Johnson. It was like, hey, how do you want to get the money and all of that? And so it was a good first day of getting that donation, and we were able to put it to work right away.
Did you happen to stop by the El Mago booth?
I did not.
Man, and there's a story, new brand, youngest, from what I understand, the youngest cigar brand owner ever. Okay, I think he's like 21 years old, right? And his cigars are tells the story that his grandparents died in the collapse of that condominium in
Oh,
Miami.
so I met the gentleman. I didn't go over to the booth, but a couple of my colleagues did, and they were telling me that story. So yeah, I'm aware.
And they're making some really good cigars. So, and then even in the advertising segment, this company, Catelli Cigars, Catelli was around a long time ago. They
Yeah.
took this hiatus because of all this FDA bullshit, right? And they've come back and they are reintroducing their main line and are not just running it out of their own shop down in Vero Beach, but they're putting it on the market and trying to rebuild that side of the business. So what you guys have been doing has obviously showing that to retailers and to brand owners that you got their back, and because of that, they're back in the game. So
And,
positive
and
there.
I can tell you one positive stat in June, we had 12 booths that were booked for New Orleans. 6 of them were new booths. So you are seeing, you're absolutely right, new brands. People, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, objectively, anyone can look and say, this might be a bad business given the threats of the FDA and what
Yeah.
was going on. Now, having that regulatory stability, having some more favorable conditions. Look, I'm not going to mince words. We have a lot of work to still do. And like these generational smoking bans that we talked about, that, is a problem that we are going to have to, again, go aggressively as we did with the lawsuits with the FDA, go after these generational smoking bans. But right now, it's a good prospect to be in the cigar industry and the premium cigar industry, whether you're a retailer or manufacturer. You look at the import numbers, you look at new businesses. Every time I get so excited when I hear about a new cigar bar or a cigar retail shop opening up. And a lot of it's because of licensing in different states. And I mean, Glenn Loop is a rock star at that. He deserves a ton of credit, and it's a joy to work with him on all of that. But I think we got to continue to do that. And one thing I would say to the folks that are retailers that are listening to the show is that don't be bashful about the industry that you're in. Be proud of it, and don't let anyone tell you that this is a bad profession of sorts. I think brick and mortar retail is the quintessential Main Street business. When I think Americana, I think of tobacconists in my eyes, and that's something that we're going to continue to fight for.
Yeah. Now, I would also bring up the other thing that happened at PCA and in memoriam, okay, is Gabby El Chan had passed away at the show. I understand he had a heart attack and died at the show the last day. Um, you were aware of that, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah, it's terrible, terrible tragedy. I believe that he passed the day after the show.
Mm.
And was so excited at there. I know Lisa Sigler was telling me that he was just very excited to be at the
Yes, he
show.
was.
It's a shame. It's always sad when you lose a member of the cigar family. And, Steve Zangle, I was very close with, and he tragically passed from Los Cayetos Cigars, and Steve, and he helped out with a lot of the advocacy stuff. And, I was on the phone call. He visited the shop or the PCA townhouse, and unfortunately, tragically passed away. He was working on a rebrand, excited for the show, and then there. So
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. I'm going to give you the last word.
well, no, I would just say thanks for having me on the show. If I can be helpful in any way, I appreciate your platform and getting our message out there. And I look forward to seeing many of your listeners and folks throughout these different events. I'll be my August and September. I will be all over the world. I'll be at Intertobac. I'll be at Drew Estate Barn Smoker. I'll be at the conventions, other events. So stop by and say hello. And like I said, I'm always welcoming new ideas and advice, and how we can continue to protect this industry that we love.
I thank you for everything that you do and have done, and keep up the great work because we need it. And with that, I'm gonna call the show, and I want to thank everybody for joining. Thank you to all the sponsors. For Without them, the show is always a little bit harder to do. And with that, we are no longer live.